Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our weekly webinar. Today, we're looking at the top 5 questions realtors must be able to answer. And really, it's the 5 questions that whether you're in real estate, whether you're in the mortgage industry, those are the questions that all of our clients have. That's on top of mind for everyone moving forward, especially with all the uncertainty in the market. Just a quick overview of the questions. Obviously, number one, when is the economy going to recover? Number 2, are we going into a recession? Number 3, is this going to be like 2008? Number 4, what about all of those job losses? And number 5, what should I be doing right now? So I appreciate your attendance today, and I'm looking forward to going over this material with you. Also, believe that you can click on question and answer. If you have any questions as we go along, I would love to address those at the end when we get to a stopping point here. So without any further ado, question number 1, when is the economy going to recover? That's on everybody's mind. We're seeing all of the unemployment numbers. We're seeing hearing a lot of news about different industries being shut down and those kinds of things. But we need to understand that where we are right now is really just like a pause button has been hit on the American economy. Those of us that are older and remember what it was like to have a VCR, you'd have to rewind the tape. Right now, it's just in a pause. Okay, in 2008, where everybody kind of goes to naturally when we're talking about recessions and problems, there was a lot of destruction. The whole real estate and lending world was in chaos. We'll talk a lot about what was going on back then, but there was a lot of rebuilding that needed to happen. It was like someone actually broke the VCR player. Now we are simply in a position of having pressed pause. Once we press play again, which in Indiana could be as early as next week, we're going to see things start to move again. And because of those differences, what we're finding is, every major financial institution is calling for a rapid V-type recovery, whether it's Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley. Obviously, we're on that downward slide right now. Quarter 1 is going to be bad. Quarter 2 is likely going to be, worse than quarter 1 was. But what we see is at some point within quarter 2 going into quarter 3, we're going to start seeing the economy come back because everything is still there. The economy was strong going into the pandemic and the shelter at home and shutting down businesses and workplace, and this whole discussion about what's a non-essential business. Everything was strong before. We can expect that there's going to be a ramp up. In fact, John Burns and his team, they're a major consulting firm in the real estate industry, and they've studied this issue, and their comment is this: historical analysis shows us that pandemics are usually V-shaped, which is sharp recessions that recover quickly enough to provide little damage to home prices. And some very cutting edge search engine analysis by our information management team showed the current slowdown is playing out similarly thus far. And they're not, obviously, in America, we've not seen anything like this in a very long time. In our lifetimes, certainly. But other countries have seen things like that. Economies do get affected by things like this. And so they're able to show how quickly things can turn around. Also, what we find the Harvard Business Review saying it's worth looking back to history to place the potential impact of COVID-19 empirically. In fact, V-shapes monopolize the empirical landscape of prior shocks, including epidemics such as SARS, the 1968 H3N2 Hong Kong flu, or the 1958 H2N2 Asian flu, and the 1918 Spanish flu. So, yeah, we are in a significant situation, but it's not unlike some of the things that we've seen in the past, even in our country. So how quickly will the economy recover? It can recover fairly quickly because of the nature of the downturn. Obviously, people are wanting to know, are we going into a recession? And the truth may actually be that we're in a recession now. We just don't have the data yet to show for sure that we are in a recession. But we need to know 2 quarters in a row with negative growth is the general definition of a recession. But the bigger question is, or this bigger statement anyway, is that a recession does not equal a housing crisis. Again, everybody kind of snaps back to 2008 when they saw the recession coupled with a housing crisis, and they failed to realize that the recession of 2008 was caused by the housing crisis. In fact, what we find is that with the exception of 2 recessions, the Great Recession from 2007 to 2009 and the Gulf War recession from 90 to 91, no other recessions have impacted the U.S. housing market, according to Freddie Mac Home Price Index data collected from 1975 to 2018. In fact, here's a slide that demonstrates that as well. You know, in 1980, 1981, in the midst of those recessions, housing prices continued to increase. You had the Gulf War recession where home prices went down a little bit. We had the dot-com 9/11 recession of 2001. Housing prices went up 6.6, and obviously we remember losing almost 20% of value in 2008. But we need to be able to explain to people why this is not 2008 all over again, that our recessions, the recession that we're in, that we are dealing with right now, is more like the 2001 recession than it is the 2008. So that's the third question that we need to be able to answer is this going to be like 2008 all over again? And the answer is a resounding no. Obviously we have to be able to answer this because many people bear scars from the Great Recession. Maybe they lost their homes, they saw their houses lose value, there was struggle, there was pain, people are having a hard time making mortgage payments, there were a lot of foreclosures. But normally what happens through the recession is that the housing industry becomes that engine that pulls the economy out of recession, and that's what we're going to see this time as well. Because in 2007, 8, and 9, we saw the S&P lose 51% of its value and home prices depreciated. However, our recession now is more like what happened in 9/11 and the dot-com crash than it is the crash of 2008. In fact, what 9/11 has in common with what's happening today is that the shock has also generated fear, angst, and anxiety among the general public. Back then, people avoided crowds because they believed another terrorist attack was coming, and they're acting the same today to avoid getting sick. And the same parts of the economy are under pressure: airlines, leisure, hospitality, restaurants, entertainment, those consumer discretionary services in general. In fact, when we look back at the dot-com and 9/11 crash, again, the S&P 500 lost 45% of its value, but home prices actually appreciated. They increased over 2000, 2001, and 2002. And the real estate industry and the housing market actually became that engine to pull us out of that recession. Another difference between what's going on currently and in 2008 is the annual home price appreciation. Prior to the crash of 2008, we had runaway home price appreciation. In fact, that was part of what was driving the bubble, is that get in now because housing prices are going up, 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 and they never expected those to fall. In comparison, over the last 6 years, we've seen more normal, modest home price appreciation. In fact, the strength of the home prices in many areas is simply due to lack of inventory, not too much money chasing after houses. Another key difference between now and 2008 is mortgage credit availability. The higher the number on this graph, the easier it is to get a mortgage. So back in 2005, 6, 7, and 8, if you could, breathe on a glass and fog it up, you were able to get a mortgage. I was not in the industry back then, but I've heard stories of people that would file bankruptcy one day and close on their house the next day. It was just crazy what was going on, and anybody who wanted a loan could get a loan. Obviously, the housing crisis happened. There was the crash, and all of a sudden, housing availability, mortgage credit availability went way down. In fact, it's still where we see it today. And because of this, the last data that we have prior to the COVID-19 and shelter in place showed that the number of houses that are in serious delinquency, which is 90 days, or in foreclosure, overall, less than 1% of the houses out there, which proves that our underwriting standards for the last 12 years have been prudent and have been working. People are able to make their mortgage payment. They're not in a situation where they're going to be walking away from their houses. The next difference between 2008 and now is the months of inventory on houses for sale. In 2007, it was a buyer's market, 8.2 months worth of inventory. As of today, or at least prior to sheltering at home, it was 3.1 months of inventory. It's very much a seller's market because there are more people looking for houses than we have houses available, and that's even probably more so now that you have less people wanting to put their houses on the market potentially during this short time period because they don't want people walking through their houses. And a lot of the people that were more casually looking at houses have kind of taken a step back. Another key difference is total home equity cashed out. Prior to the crash, Americans pulled $824 billion out of their house. And what did they do with that money? They bought RVs, boats, cars, and took vacations to Europe and other crazy places. The last 3 years, in comparison, Americans have pulled $232 billion out of their house, about a quarter. And they're using their house more wisely than we were back in the 2005, 6, and 7 era. In fact, all the houses in America, 53.8% of all the homes in America have at least 50% equity. There are numerous homes that are totally paid off, and there are a lot of people that have been making their payments for years and years and years and are sitting on a lot of equity in their homes. 37% of the homes are free and clear. 26.7% of the homes that are mortgaged have at least 50% equity, combination of appreciation as well as paying down that mortgage. Also, another important difference between now and 2006 is that houses are more affordable based on average income. So the average house in 2006 required a quarter, or a little bit better than a quarter, of the average person's income. Whereas today, the average house requires only 14.8% of someone's income. Now, yes, that is before all of the unemployment, but we're still seeing that, that housing payment is way low compared to what people are normally bringing in, which adds stability to the market. Next question, obviously, what about all of those job losses? It's really been incredible from an economic standpoint and kind of a bystander standpoint to be looking at the numbers that have happened over the last several weeks, right? So we saw 3.34 million, 6.65 million people applying for unemployment in the same weeks. It's just unbelievable what has happened. However, we need to take a step back and look at what's behind the numbers. Okay, what part of the economy is suffering the most, and what is the likelihood that these people are going to come back to work pretty quickly? Because that's going to be answering the question of how quick can that economy get started again. Well, let's look at the breakdown from April 3rd's unemployment report. 59.5% of the people that filed for unemployment were food services and drinking establishments, so bartenders, servers, waiters, waitresses. Once we get through this, this shelter at home point and people can go out, many of these people will go back to work. It may look a little bit different. They may not be as busy, but they're going to be going back to work. You have construction workers that have been laid off. There's construction is going to come back. Healthcare office workers. So those are people like, receptionists at the dentist office, receptionists at the doctor's offices, medical assistants, those kinds of people that once we're not sheltering in place anymore, people are still going to need to get their teeth cleaned. They're still going to need to go see the doctor. Childcare workers. You better believe that, when, people can go back to work and they can, they've been homeschooling their kids now for, 3 or 4 weeks, they're going to, probably pay extra to their childcare workers. Temporary help services, retail. Okay, a lot of stores have been shut down. And so retail people have been put on the unemployment line, but they're going to be coming back quickly. So, a lot of these people can be coming back into the workforce in a relatively short amount of time once the marketplace opens up again. And again, that's why, when we look at the different unemployment models in the economic models, we see that V-type recovery. Now, rapid is a relative term. For a lot of people, those kinds of things may not be rapid enough. But let's look at the different projections here and see what we can understand. So Goldman Sachs predicts that in 2020 we could reach 15% unemployment. However, by next year we're going to be at 6% to 8%, 2022, 5%, 2023 down to 4%, about where we were prior to the pandemic and the shutdown. A lot of people are asking the question, well, what is the relationship between unemployment rates and home sales? The higher the unemployment, the less homes that sell? Not necessarily. In fact, here's a slide that talks about that unemployment rates and home sales do not have a direct relationship. We saw back in the 90s when unemployment got up to 7.5%, people were still buying houses. As unemployment went down towards 2000, people were still buying houses. As it went back up between 2000 and 2005, more people were buying houses. The only time that we really see a high unemployment with low sales of houses is during that period right after the crash. So many people lost their homes and lost their jobs, and at the same time, lending standards had tightened up. We'd gone from, everybody can get a loan to almost nobody could get a loan. And so that certainly affected the number of people who were able to buy houses. In fact, over the last several years, as unemployment has gone down, sales of houses have stayed pretty steady. And that's just an indication of the, the inventory that we have out there. I think that more people would be buying houses the last couple of years had there been more houses available. We need to understand also the unemployment rates that we have now compared to past financial crises. Right, we look at the Great Depression with 4 years of 20% or better unemployment, 5 years of 15% or more unemployment. Whereas with the Great Recession, we had 3 years above 8.5%. 2020 will be at 15, but if that number of 8.5% unemployment is kind of the key, if we were under that, things would be doing better. Because you see, in 2012 there was recovery was happening, and we were at 8% unemployment, 7.9. In the current condition, they're expecting by 2021 that we're going to be at somewhere between 6 and 8% unemployment, which is going to be fine for the housing industry. the fifth and final question that we need to address this morning is, what should I do right now? Okay, what should we be doing, especially when we are, sheltering in place, we're unable to do some of the things that we are used to being able to do? Well, we need to remember that home ownership is an important source of wealth creation, enabling current homeowners and succeeding generations to move up the economic ladder. Realize that, as a real estate professional, being a part of the housing industry, you have a great part to play in, economic revitalization. We find that in communities as, people move in and renovate homes. But home ownership in and of itself is an important part of wealth creation. And we need to be having those discussions with people that, yes, it's still a great time to buy, because you're getting in on an opportunity to really create wealth. So what should we be doing? We should be, there's really three things that we can do that are money-making activities: prospect for leads, nurture those leads, and close those leads. Okay. And how we do those things may look a little bit different in this current environment, but we can still be prospecting. We can still be talking to people, getting our message out there. As we have conversations, we want to nurture those leads and help them to get closer to being able to buy. And using this presentation, I can send you the slides, and use these slides to talk with them about why there's still value in owning a home and being a part of that process, and close those leads. It may be a matter of setting up virtual tours and being highly selective with the places that you are able to show people to buy. But people do need to sell right now. People do need to buy right now, because people get transferred all the time. Leases run out all the time. So, we're serving, people at a very high level through the real estate business. Another reason why this is so important is that, again, because real estate is that engine that pulls the economy out of the recession. Ben Bernanke, who was the head of the Federal Reserve during the housing crisis of 2008 and the mortgage meltdown, said this. He said, "My results do suggest that in the absence of the panic, the declines in unemployment, consumption, and output in the early stages of the Great Recession would have been significantly less severe." So that panic in the market, panic not only on Wall Street, but also in Main Street, that caused people to shut down and stop doing what they were doing before. Had there not been that panic, unemployment may not have been so bad. Consumption may have stayed a little bit higher than what it did. And the output of the early stages of the Great Recession would have been less severe, and we could have maybe mitigated that curve a little bit. So ultimately, as a real estate professional, you need to be asking the question, how can I differentiate myself during a pandemic? What are things that I can do to be different than everybody else that's out there? And really, the key is by creating educational content that keeps your clients and prospects informed during these times. People want information. They can handle the truth. They can handle the fact that, it's going to get very ugly before it gets better, but that it will get better. That there is a light at the end of the tunnel. One of the things that we can be doing is we can be turning our Facebook page, our blog page, our landing page into a homepage. Work up some timely, relevant posts answering the most pressing questions that customers have, kind of like these. This is the content that clients and people need more than home search or community info, more than recipes, more than anything else. People need to know the answer to these questions. That's why I wanted to present this webinar today. You may wonder that where we got some of this information. I would encourage you to look up Keeping Current Matters. They produce a blog every day that you can post onto Facebook or onto your webpage. And if you want to try them and get a gift card, you can follow that link right there. Also, if this has been helpful to you, we want to be your local lender of choice. Okay, we offer Wells funding, we offer in-house underwriting, dedicated service team, we have a local appraisal panel, and we help realtors create and convert leads. And for your buyers, we help them win the offer every time through our the way that we pre-approve our buyers, the way that we go after the listing agent to get your offer accepted, and we have a full product line of products available. Thank you so much for your attendance here today, and wanted to see if there anyone here that would have any questions. I think that you can simply go to that question and answer page and see if you have any questions that we can help you with today. All right, well, feel free to reach out anytime, give me a call, shoot me a text, we can connect over Facebook. Thank you again so much for attending the webinar today. Appreciate you and what you do, because literally as real estate professionals, you are on the front line of bringing our economy back. So God bless you, have a great day.